What if a $10 grip change could tighten your shot pattern by 30%, and squeezing the club harder at address but softer in transition could fix the rest? Canadian coach Liam Mucklow measured both in a really interesting study, and the results kind of blew me away. If you're new to this channel, my name is Jon Sherman. I'm the author of The 4 Foundations of Golf, and I'm always on the search for ways that golfers can lower their scores without rehauling their swings. So I'm going to tackle Liam's research in 2 quick rounds in this video. The first is going to be grip size and how golfers saw a 30 to 50% reduction in their shot dispersion with one quick change. The second part is going to be about grip pressure and how they discovered why the phrase grip the club like a baby bird is misleading and how the pros are actually doing the opposite. I'll show you the data, the drills, and the $20 test that you can run today if you wanted. So if you're ready, let's start with the grip size study. Liam Mucklow first asked the question about grip sizes because when you walk into a pro shop, there are over 10 different sizes for gloves, but every pro shop is carrying the same standard grip sizes. He figured that the industry was missing out on one of the most important parts of club fitting simply because they didn't want an inventory headache. So they designed a study that could be conducted in 3 different sites in Canada. They took a bunch of golfers ranging from tour pros to high handicappers and tested 5 different grip sizes ranging from undersize to jumbo. They measured each golfer's hands and used a GC Quad launch monitor, a K-vest, and impact location board to see if there were any meaningful differences when they did swap out these grip sizes. And as I said earlier, the results were pretty shocking when he told me on our podcast. So the biggest headline is that when they found the right grip size, golfers averaged about a 30% tighter dispersion on their shots due to lower club face rotation. One senior golfer cut his dispersion by 50% with a jumbo grip. This is worth a serious handicap reduction on the course. That's gonna be less errant tee shots, more greens in regulation, and easier greenside wedge shots. However, they did find that club head speed was mostly unchanged, so there wasn't a big difference in distance. But what was even more interesting was that there was 0 correlation between hand length and the best performing grip size. And this is something that a lot of club fitters just assume that if you have larger hands, you'll need a bigger grip. In the study, a golfer with huge hands actually did better with an undersized grip, while a senior female golfer with smaller hands did best with jumbo grips. Even I've been fascinated about grip size lately because I actually changed to mid-sized grips this season. I wanted to help reduce the strain on my elbows, but I actually found that the benefit was I felt more club face control, particularly with my driver, and I really liked what was happening in my ball striking. So why is all this happening? Liam and his team didn't know for sure, but they felt that the bigger grips might help golfers with weaker hands squeeze the club harder, which helped stabilize the club face through the impact interval. Conversely, golfers with stronger hands might be better suited with a smaller grip. Either way, their team was so encouraged by this data that they added grip size testing to every lesson package at all their locations at the golf lab in Canada. It did increase their inventory budget, but they found that 4 out of every 5 golfers actually had the wrong grip size when they started measuring. Now, in terms of club fitting, this is one of the easiest and most cost-effective changes you can make. Liam said that he's now changed to mid-size grips as the new standard and starts golfers there before deciding to go bigger or smaller. And for anyone who's interested in testing this themselves, what you can do is get 2 matching 7-irons and hit a bunch of balls on a simulator where you have 2 different grip sizes, and you can measure if one of them is materially straightening your shot dispersion, and then you likely have the winner. So if you are a golfer that loves to test and experiment like I do, this could be a major low-hanging fruit in your game that doesn't cost you as much as some of the other equipment upgrades, like buying a new driver or a new set of irons or wedges. Since our podcast aired with Liam, I've actually had several golfers reach out to me who've experimented with larger grips, and they were blown away by how much better it felt because they never assumed it would be something that could help fix their swing. So that doesn't mean that every golfer is going to do better with larger grips, but as Liam said, the standard size has been kind of overused in the golf industry, and golfers should experiment with sizes that are larger or even smaller to see how it affects their shot dispersion and ball striking. Now let's move on to the next study they did, which might be even more important on grip pressure. The study had some serious findings, but they're a little more complicated and nuanced. So I'm going to take you through some of the bigger highlights and try to keep it very simple. So I've always felt that grip pressure is incredibly important. Over the years, I've experimented so much with my perceived pressure. And for me, I found that keeping my hands and forearms more relaxed has given me better results than trying to squeeze the living daylights out of the golf club. But the problem with grip pressure is, how do you quantify that? What feels relaxed to me might feel different to someone else. It's kind of like swing tempo. If I tell 10 golfers to swing smooth, they might all do something completely different. So this is why Liam's team wanted to measure exactly how much pressure golfers were applying to the club at address and, most importantly, throughout the entire golf swing. They partnered with a company called Sensor Edge, who designed special grips to measure the pressure and installed them on a 58-degree wedge, a 6-iron, and drivers. And similar to the other study, they tested different groups of golfers ranging from elite ball strikers and tour professionals all the way through high handicappers who are struggling with consistent contact. But first they had to test each golfer's baseline grip strength. This was incredibly important for the findings. So they took a dynamometer, which is a pretty inexpensive device that anyone can purchase. Hopefully I pronounced that properly. And they tested max grip strength with their lead hand, trail hand, and then total strength with both hands together. Now the biggest finding was that better players showed higher raw grip strength. So in other words, the pro golfer's 3 out of 10 squeeze can equal or exceed an amateur's 10 out of 10 squeeze. This isn't exactly shocking because better golfers have either developed that strength through hitting tons of golf balls or also engaged in some form of strength training, which is highly correlated with grip strength. But when they measure what happened before and during the golf swing, this is where the extra hand strength started to make a ton of sense to his team. At address, they found out that touring pros started with about 50% of their max grip pressure, whereas the poorer ball strikers were far lighter at about 25 to 30% of their max grip strength. Additionally, the pros were lead hand dominant, and higher handicappers were the only group that let their trail hand pressure dominate their grip pressure. So in other words, the better players were applying way more overall pressure at address, and it was more focused on their lead hand. Now here's where things got really interesting. The professional golfers were the only group that reduced grip pressure when the club changes direction. It was a subtle dip, especially in their trail hand. Conversely, every amateur group tightened, often sharply, during transition. High handicappers sometimes spiked above 100% of their relative pressure during their downswing. And at impact, there was a much bigger disparity between the groups. Higher handicappers were applying up to 3 times their trail hand pressure versus their lead hand, which absolutely wrecked their club face control. Now, on the other hand, the pros maintained their lead hand dominance from the start to the finish of their swing. So just to recap, the pros used more of their grip pressure at address, which was more focused on their lead hand. In transition, they slightly loosened that pressure, but primarily in their trail hand. But they were mostly maintaining that lead hand dominance throughout the entire golf swing. Recreational golfers are doing the exact opposite. They are gripping too loosely at address, and then they apply way too much pressure throughout their swing, and at impact, mostly focused on their trail hand. Now, another finding was that higher handicaps have roughly 40% variability in total pressure from swing to swing versus the pros. It's not a surprise that the pros had a very smooth pressure curve from swing to swing, where the classic slicer was very chaotic and had no pattern. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, when you get generic golf information, you have to be a little careful and experiment with how it applies to your golf game. Liam Mucklow has found this information to be extremely helpful when he's giving lessons. Instead of making a wholesale swing change, he often cues students to try grip pressure changes first to see if that will make a meaningful difference. So a great drill that he recommended is for golfers to do lead hand only swings where you're gripping the club just with your lead hand. So for a right-handed golfer, you're going to grip the club with your left hand only and hit balls lightly as a nice warm-up drill perhaps. This can help groove that lead hand pressure and promote better sequencing throughout your swing. Additionally, you can experiment with squeezing your lead hand a little bit harder at address and then feeling that light loosening pressure when your hips start your downswing, and see how that works for you, particularly in your trail hand. Now, there is no right or wrong answer for all golfers, but I think everyone should be experimenting with grip pressure in some form. Anecdotally, it has always made a big difference in my game, and I'm always keeping track of this. Sometimes when I'm under pressure in a tournament and I'm feeling nervous, I actually will grip the club harder without even noticing it. So one thing I consciously try and do is relax my forearms, my chest, and my hands before I address the ball. It's part of my pre-shot routine when I need it. Also, I do believe the findings of this study are another piece of evidence that point towards the benefits of lifting weights for golfers. You've heard me talk about this on other videos and in my podcast and my book. Yes, you can develop more grip strength by hitting more golf balls over time, but there are also so many other benefits to getting stronger, like increased swing speed, more mobility, control over your body, and injury prevention. So think about lifting weights. Here's a quick recap before you hit the range or a simulator and try some of this information out. Test at least 2 grip sizes and see if one gives you a material change in your shot dispersion. You could try a mid-size, you can try a jumbo grip and see the changes. Now with grip pressure, you can try warming up with lead hand swings only as a drill, and you can experiment with giving more pressure on your lead hand at address and then feel that slight loosening in transition, particularly in your trail hand. Now, if you want to hear the full conversation that we had with Liam Mucklow, you can check out the link in the description to hear the entire podcast. It's really interesting and one of the favorite episodes that I've done out of the 150 plus episodes of The Sweet Spot. And don't miss my last video where I teach you how to pick the right driver.